Hi there, and welcome back to my living room for the second part of our Vibrator series. In part one, we talked about when you might want to use a vibrator, either by yourself or with partnered sex. We talked about some of the different categories of vibrators. I showed you the difference between the vibrators that are battery operated and the ones that are chargeable. We talked about vibrators that are used internally in your vagina versus vibrators that were meant to be used externally. In this part, we're going to dig a little deeper into external vibrators, or the vibrators that are meant to go outside of your body. Most women, when they're looking for their first vibrator, are looking for external vibrators. They want a vibrator that they can use primarily on the clitoris in order to have an orgasm. It may be a lot easier and faster to have an orgasm with a vibrator than it can sometimes be with a partner's hand or mouth and a penis. And sometimes you're just in the mood for things to be faster or quicker or more efficient. I want to reiterate the fact that for many women, a vibrator can be a lifesaver. You just had kids and you know that you don't have the kind of time that you used to have sex. Or you're just living a crazy, busy life and you're exhausted and you want to have an orgasm. You want to have it a little faster than you used to. Or you're just having trouble having an orgasm. That's all okay. It's all about having choices, and an external vibrator can be incredibly helpful and useful in giving you more options. Okay, now, you know that external vibrators are meant to go on the outside of your body, specifically on your clitoris. But again, they can be used anywhere, like other vibrators. Now, again, they are split into two categories, battery operated and chargeable or plug-in. I'm going to start with the battery-operated external vibrators. I'm going to show you two of them. 1, 2. They're little and they're cute and they're subtle, so women are really drawn to them. Once upon a time, before I actually had patients trying the vibrators in the exam rooms, I would just show them the vibrators, and then when I showed them the different vibrators, they all gravitated to these little tiny ones, right? They would almost always pick these small ones because they just kind of felt less in your face than the bigger ones. They felt easier to manage somehow. And as I said, they felt more subtle. The problem with these little tiny ones, they're not strong. And so they are way less effective at helping you have an orgasm. Seriously. And sometimes the batteries have a tendency to give out at the worst possible moment. So these are great vibrators. They're a lot of fun to use if you're somebody who has an orgasm pretty easily. If you're not having any problems with your orgasms and you just want to add in something for fun because you want to try it or to make having those orgasms a little bit easier and faster, then these vibrators may be the perfect option for you. But I will say a word about the batteries. Some vibrators use AA batteries, some use AAA batteries, some actually use watch batteries. So please pay attention to what kind of batteries it uses and make sure that you have extra batteries and that you keep them around the house. Because as I said, the most irritating thing, I promise you, is if you're using a vibrator and the battery dies and you don't have spare ones in the house. And then you go, oh my God, what the hell did I just do? And then you'll get mad at me. So pay attention to those batteries. Now let's talk about the chargeable and the plug-in ones, because those are really the ones I tend to recommend. They're the ones that take a little bit of convincing to have women try. The classic ones that everybody always talked about for decades, especially when I entered this field, was the Hitachi Magic Wand, the Big Mama. This is the Hitachi Magic Wand. And as you can see, it's huge. And I always make jokes that you can do singing routines with it. And people have told me that it looks like a hand blender. But it's an incredibly powerful vibrator. And here's the deal. If you're having trouble having an orgasm, this might be the perfect solution to your problem. Also notice that it has this very big round head, and that gives you a lot of surface area and a lot of surface stimulation, because that's the part of the vibrator that actually comes in contact with your body. But there are way smaller chargeable ones that are also meant to go externally. And so, for example, this one is incredibly popular because it's much smaller than the other one, and it's very simple. It has a smaller head, which for some women is a negative, but for some women is a positive. It's much lighter and easier to hold. So I call this vibrator the little black dress of vibrators. It's a basic model of a very, very strong vibrator. Not quite as strong as this one, but pretty close to as strong as this one. The most important thing that you really need to consider when buying a vibrator is how strong a vibration gets. For women who are having trouble having an orgasm, generally the stronger the better. You want a powerful vibration that will stimulate your nerves enough to induce the orgasm. If you don't have trouble having orgasms other ways, then you can play around with variations and see which strengths are like fun or better for you. Some women like stronger, some women like less strong. Also, an interesting thing to consider, which is hard to communicate on a video, is that every vibrator has its own form of pulsing. Some of them move up and down a little more, some of them move sideways a little more, and some of them actually work in a circular motion a little more. You may not exactly know what it is, and then you may not be able to describe the differences, but each vibration is a little different, and different women respond differently to different vibrations. That's why it's so helpful when we can have women actually try out vibrators in the exam rooms of our office. I will say the most important thing to know about this issue is that you may get used to a vibrator and you like the feel of a certain vibrator, and then if you need to replace that vibrator for some reason, it's a little bit tricky because you've now gotten used to that same vibrator and that same vibration. And if you have to switch to another one, sometimes it takes a while to get used to that new vibration. But I promise you, your body does adjust. One more thing to consider when choosing a vibrator is the feel of the material on the vibrator. More and more, they're making vibrators that are softer. They're not hard plastic. This one is hard plastic. This one is soft and plush. And that's really nice because the top of the vibrator is going to go up against your skin. So you should keep that in mind and know what you think feels good. One quick piece of advice. I would highly recommend that if you start using a strong vibrator, you don't start immediately with it directly on your clitoris. That you start on your leg and you move up and touch gently on the vulva area. You could move the vibrator up and down a little bit just to desensitize yourself and get used to the feeling before you go wham onto that clitoris. Remember, your clitoris is incredibly sensitive. It has 8,000 nerve endings, which is way more than any other part of your body. And you kind of don't want to shock your system. You really would like to sort of play with things until you get the vibrator on the most sensitive area. Nothing about this process will be instantaneous, so there's nothing wrong with you if you need to use an external vibrator for a while before it feels totally pleasurable. And it also takes a while until you have an orgasm. If it's your first time and you haven't had an orgasm, be patient with yourself. Just trying to see what feels good. Move that vibrator around, get yourself turned on. And always remember this, your brain is a critical part of the equation. One of my patients complained that the vibrator wasn't working, but when I questioned her more about that, she said she was using the vibrator while she was watching the news. I was like, come on, really? If you keep using the external vibrator, it will usually give you enough stimulation so that you can have an orgasm. And it may be the most effective, the easiest way to teach yourself to have an orgasm. And once your body kind of learns that neurological pathway, it should be much, much easier to replicate it. I'm going to show you two more external vibrators that are kind of different from the norm, but I think they're important for you to see because they function differently. So you could think of them as different prototypes. This is a new type of vibrator which doesn't vibrate in the traditional sense. It suctions, so it's markedly different than the other vibrators. The suction, if you can see it, goes directly on your clitoris. It's less strong than traditional vibrators, but it has a suction movement, and some women, especially women who like oral sex, find that sensation incredibly arousing. And for some women, that's the best and easiest way to have an orgasm. So if you're someone who thinks you need gentler and less stimulation, you might want to check it out. But if you're someone who needs a strong, hard stimulation, which I think is most women, that vibrator probably will not do it. And then the last external vibrator I'm going to show you is the Rabbit. The Rabbit was made famous by Sex and the City, everybody's favorite TV show. What's interesting about the Rabbit, and this also comes in many variations and styles, but what makes it unique is that it has two parts, the internal part that goes into your vagina and the external part that goes outside on your clitoris. These models have 2 different mechanisms, one for each moving part of the vibrator. So you're getting multiple stimulation simultaneously. For some women, this is great. For others, there's just too much going on at the same time and it's too distracting and complicated. So you can figure out if you think it would be fun and work for you, and if it's something you want to consider. So there you have it, an overview of external vibrators. Stay tuned because in the last part of this series, I'll go over the things you should consider when purchasing a vibrator and how to evaluate them. And I'll also address how you might want to go about talking to your partner about using a vibrator if that's something that you want to do, because that seems to be something that stymies many women. I'll see you soon.